Most players think they understand the fall, but they don't. Michiru says shadows eat people's mind to cause apathy syndrome. However, that's not really what's happening. And those coffins during the dark hours, they're not what you think either. So in this video, we are clearing it all up, from how the dark hours actually works to how what's the fall really means, and why it's one of the darkest ending in the Persona history. Spoiler, it's not about everyone dying. Let's begin with the event that starts the story of Persona 3, the Apathy Syndrome. This is the mysterious illness that drains people of all emotion, leaving them completely empty inside. The game refers to the people with this condition as the Lost. So, how do people end up with Apathy Syndrome? Well, early in the game, it's explained that during the dark hours, some humans who aren't protected inside the coffins are attacked by roaming shadows. That said, Michiru describes this as shadows eating a person's mind, which leave them empty and unresponsive. But that's not actually what happens, even though the cutscene make it look that way. Now, to find out what really happens, we have to take a look at the official lore book called the Persona 3 Club Book. The books explain that inside every living thing's psyche exists a realm known as the collective unconscious, and that's where the shadows exist. That said, I won't be explaining how the shadows get there in the first place, as I already did so in another video that I will link at the end of this one for those who are interested. Anyway, in addition, the book and, well, the game also explain that what all the shadows want is to return to their source of origin, or Nick's body, which lies dormant in the moon. So putting all of this together, the book clarifies that what you saw in the cutscene is actually not the shadows eating the person's minds, but rather shadows living it. However, shadows, despite what many might think, are actually an essential part of the human mind. So when they leave, the person loses that part of themselves, which causes the condition we know as Apathy Syndrome. Again, I've already explained why and how shadows are vital to life, along with a bunch of other information that will make everything much clearer to you in another video that you can watch later. Okay, I won't ever mention this ever again, at least for the rest of this video. Moving on, we'll be exploring the purpose of Tartarus, the Dark Hours, and others related topics. That said, this is one of those things that many people think they already understand, but there's actually a lot more to it than what the game directly tells you. Long before Dark Hours came into existence, the Kirijo group, under the guidance of Koetsu Kirijo, discovered a mysterious stone that would later be identified as the Plume of Dust. During their research on the stone, the scientists accidentally opened a portal to a strange world filled with dangerous creatures called shadows. This mysterious world, of course, is the collective unconscious. Now, not long after that, they discovered that both the Plume of Dust and the shadows possesses the ability to manipulate time, space, and information. This inspired Koetsu to study them further, hoping to harness their power, which resulted in the Kirijo group capturing countless shadows and begin large-scale experiment called the Shadow Experiment. However, as you probably already know, the experiment went terribly wrong, resulting in an explosion at the lab that gave birth to both Dark Hours and Tartarus. Though, to be fair, the accident itself was just the explosion. The creation of Dark Hours and Tartarus, as later reviewed by Ikusuki, was actually intentional.
The experiment did go awry, but that wasn't the reason the Dark Hour and Tartarus came to be. They manifested as a result of harvesting the Shadow's power, just as the experiment was designed to do. That's why your grandfather gathered so many shadows, to initiate the fall.
That can't be.
Now, what is the purpose of Tartarus and Dark Hour? Well, remember what I said earlier about how shadows want to return to Nyx? Basically, because the shadows are trapped inside the collective unconscious, while Nyx's body exists in the physical world, the two can reunite. So, the shadow created the Dark Hour as a middle realm between the conscious world, which I'll now just keep calling physical realm to make it easier to understand, and the unconscious realm. That said, they were able to do this by combining their power to manipulate times and space. And this is also why both the Dark Hour and Tartarus can operate on a completely different flow of time. Within this realm, shadows can finally interact with humans who aren't inside the coffin, either by escaping from their mind or by attacking and merging with the shadow within other human minds to grow stronger. Speaking of the coffin though, Persona 3 Club Book also explained that they represent people who did not enter the Dark Hours and continue to stay in the physical realm during it. Basically, the imagery of the coffin mainly acts as a symbolism rather than having any special function. Still, it is nice that the book did explain this. Another thing worth noting here is the story of the eerie sound that the student and the resident of the Tatsumi Port Island started hearing. This sound was shown to put people in deep trance, making them walk toward and disappearing into the Tartarus. Then several days later, they will return as the Lost. With everything I've told you so far, you might think that it's the shadow inside the Tartarus calling out to the shadow within people's mind, telling them to come to Tartarus. And that would be mostly correct. However, there's one small detail that most people get wrong about this part. And that is that the voice isn't coming from the shadow inside Tartarus, but it's actually the voice of a person-owned shadow whispering to them and taking control. This explanation to me makes the most sense because no one else can hear the voice except the person themselves.
Huh? What voice? I don't hear anything.
Which makes it likely that the sound doesn't exist in the physical world and only exists inside their mind. But yeah, this is basically your shadow using you like an Uber Black to drop it off at Tartarus for their big night out. Now, eventually, as more and more shadow gathers together, several things can happen. First, they can extend the duration of the Dark Hours, and maybe even make it permanent, as we see during the events of the fall. Though, to be honest, that part is unclear to me since the game ends with its destruction, so it's hard to tell how long it would have lasted if it continued to exist. Second, they can alter Tartarus itself, constantly shifting its floor and making the tower grow taller. Once it becomes tall enough, it can act as an antenna, sending a signal to Nick's body in the moon and calling her down to finally reunite with them. And third, the shadows gain the ability to teleport everyone from the physical realm into the Dark Hours. And because of the reason I explained earlier, this will appear to look like the removal of the coffin rather than actual teleportation. And once everyone enters the Dark Hour, the shadow can then free the ones still trapped inside people's minds so that all of them can return to Nyx together. Okay, this is another thing that will be the last time that I will bring up, but just one final reminder. The reason that they can do any of this is because shadow have the power to manipulate time, space, and even information. And yeah, if you haven't noticed by now, this is pretty much the Persona version of
Nanomachine, son.
Aside from how the shadows use Tartarus like a giant antenna and gain the power to force everyone out of their coffins through a massive gathering, there are also many small details from both the games and the movie that confirm their behavior that we learn from the Persona 3 Club Book. In many scenes, you can see shadows leaving people's bodies and attacking others. That said, while the movie keeps things pretty faithful to the book explanation, the game takes things even further, showing people completely turning into shadow. To be more specific though, this mostly happened to the cult members who believe in the fall or those who strongly wish for death. And you can also see that these are the same people whose shadow were able to escape their body first in the movie. Moreover, it's also important to note that just like Nyx, the shadow aren't acting out of cruelty or hatred toward humans. The attack aren't out of malice since they're actually freeing and absorbing the shadow that still exists inside people, allowing all of them to return to Nyx together. So, in a sense, they're actually a pretty good friends. So what is the fall really? Well, let's look back at Ryoji's explanation one more time, because now you might be surprised by how literal it actually is when you connect it with everything we've gone over so far in this video.
Nyx is the mother of shadows. In ancient times, she bestowed death upon this world. If she awakens, the world will be swallowed by darkness, and all life will perish.
All life?
Are you saying everyone will die?
It'd be more accurate to say that we'll all surrender the will to live.
Wait, are you talking about the lost?
So the part about awakens here clearly refer to when the shadows summon Nyx Domin's body through their mass gathering in Tartarus. And of course, Ryoji has to be present for this to happen. The world will be swallowed by darkness. It's referring to the world being overrun by shadow and possibly being permanently stuck in the Dark Hour. Though at that point, I guess we can't really call it Dark Hour anymore, can we? Then there's the line, all life will be perished, which Ryoji later clarifies as will all surrender the will to live. This, as we now know, doesn't mean dying in the literal sense, but it's actually referring to the living things losing their shadow, and without them, they all become the lost. So to put it simply, the fall is the event where all shadows, originally given to all living things by Nyx, return back to her. And when that happened, all life become the lost. That said, even among players who understand the full story of today's topics, there's still one big misconception. Many think the fall is tragic because everyone dies, but that's not the real reason. If you think about it, throughout the entire game, the message is clear. Death isn't the end. There are things that live on beyond it, like how a good teacher continues to exist in the heart and memories of their students, or how a person's words can become a book, passing their wisdom to future generations long after they are gone. The Death Tarot card also reflects this idea. While its meaning can vary depending on interpretation, it often represents transformation, change, and new beginning. But when reversed, it means something very different. Delay endings, depression, being unaware, or resisting change. That's it. If you think about it, these traits perfectly describe the loss whose existence eventually fade into stillness. So, to put it simply, the fall isn't just the event that brings extinction to all life. It's the ultimate contradiction of the game core message. It's the complete rejection of growth, change, and connection embodied by the loss, resulting in true stillness of the realities. As always, if you enjoyed this video, consider becoming a channel member. Your support really helped me making more projects like this one. Members also get early access to video, exclusive update, and access to Discord Lounge. Just be sure to check each tier perks before joining. And of course, a big thanks to all the current members for making this video possible. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time when lore and game meet.